Alright, let's talk about the Warbirds first, because this is the plane that everybody thinks is the most exciting plane to fly. We'll start with this one. This is ME-109. This is a foam plane. Comes with a very weak engine, weak servos. The wing is very flexible and weak. The plane flies unrealistically slow. I put a bigger engine in it hoping that would solve some of the problems, but the wing is so weak and flexible, being foam, that it just starts to warp at higher speeds and the plane gets erratic. Even the tail section is very weak and flexible. You can see how it just wiggles so easily. So I don't recommend this plane. A foam plane just in a Warbird is simply not going to work. It's just, if you get a crushing type injury, an accordion type injury to this wing, it's not repairable. A clean break you could glue back together again, but not a crush or a bend. A better plane in a Warbird series is this one. This is made by SIG. This has got a 48-inch wingspan. The wing is very strong, very rigid, because it's a ply balsa monocoque type wing. I even broke that wing one time. I just pick up all the pieces, put them back together again like a jigsaw puzzle using crazy glue, and you can't even see that the wing was broken at one time, and it has full strength. The tail is still going to be small on a Warbird, so remember that these planes have to fly at least 20 to 25 miles an hour for landing. In the air, you fly them about 50 or 60 miles an hour for them to look realistic and to have enough. Because of the small tail, you have to have enough speed in order to be able to have control using, with those small control surfaces. This plane is a P-47. The manufacturer also makes a P-40 and a Spitfire. The problem with those two planes is so that the battery has to be accessed by taking the wing off, and that's a bit of a pain. The P-47 is a radial engine design. The cowl is big and deep, and so because the fuselage is so deep, they're able to put the battery access hatch right behind the engine here, so you never have to take that wing off. And remember, though, that these Warbirds have to be landed at least 20 to 25 miles an hour. Below that speed, they'll drop like a stone. They simply will not fly. A tight turn or a loop will also slow it down below 20 miles an hour, and you'll lose control of the plane. So you have to fly them hot, fly them 50, 60 miles an hour, and then they will fly. They look nice. They will barrel roll, they will loop, but they're not really stunt planes. This plane is a Fokker D7. This is a little bit easier to fly because it is a biplane and flies a little slower, has lift, can be landed about 10 to 15 miles an hour. The landing gear is very flimsy, though. I had to put on beefed up landing gear in order to be able to fly this thing, because I'm hard on landing gear. I have a lot of hard landings. This motor is a 3530 950. I use a 1500 milliwatt battery pack in it. This plane has a 35-36,000, and I use a 2200 battery pack in it. This plane has a 42-40,000, and I use a 3200 battery pack in it. Now, these are two of the best planes to learn how to fly. Look how big the tail sections are, so you got plenty of control even at slow speed. You can land these planes going 8 to 10 miles an hour. They're both called Sportsters. This is about a 39-inch version, and this is a 48-inch version. This one you'd put a 3530 950, and you'd fly it with a 11-volt 1500 size battery. This one you'd put a 35-36,000 in, and you'd fly it with a 11-volt 2300 or 2200 size battery. Very stable planes, very easy to land, very beefy landing gear that you can bend the gear and bend it back, bend the gear, bend it back about 100 times. It's not going to break on you. Just keep bending the gear back. And easy to fix because it's monocoque. Now I destroyed both of them, but both these planes I flew at least 600 times, so I really learned a lot from them, and they were a lot of fun to fly. This is also a really excellent plane to fly. This is called the Ugly Stick. This is an old standard. Look how big the wing is. Look how big the tail is. Control surfaces are huge. Very beefy plane. It's got really strong landing gear. That's what you want. You will have rough landings, and so you don't want. I've ripped the landing gear off a couple of times on this plane. I just glue it back on. It's got a nice battery compartment. I put a 4240,000 on this plane. It's got a 48-inch wingspan. I fly it with an 11-volt 3200 battery, and I get a 5 or 6 minute flight out of this thing. The wing core is very thick, so it has very slow landing characteristics. It has plenty of lift going 10 miles an hour, so you just bring it in about 10 or 12 miles an hour and it lands like a pussycat. So easy plane to fix. Again, monocoque, ply, and balsa. That's what you want to look for. ARF, so you just glue the two wing halves together. You put the tail on and then put your servos in. Remember, you want to buy a good radio. You don't want to fly something that's cheap that doesn't give you a very good reception. So I recommend this plane. I'm still flying this plane as an intermediate. It's a lot of fun to fly, and I've got some video for you to show you how well it flies. Now, talk about radios. An FM radio is a good radio, but remember the antenna, you can never point this antenna directly at the plane, so you have to sit a little sideways in your chair when you're flying and keep the antenna sideways a little bit. If you just put it up, it gets in your line of vision, which is a bit of a pain. I really recommend that you spend the extra $50 and you get a 2.4 gigahertz radio. Remember, FM, if anybody's on your frequency, they'll crash your plane, or you'll crash their plane. 2.4 gigahertz radio, you don't have that problem because this has got a computerized serial number. And the radio reception is a little bit better with this, and the antenna is only this big, so it's not something that's going to get in your line of vision. Now, the planes that are the most fun to fly aren't the Warbirds. They're actually the stunt planes. For an intermediate flyer anyway, these things are really great. One on the left is the Sukhoi. It's similar to an Edge or a 330S that has about a 39-inch wingspan. I put a 36,000 in it and fly it with a 2200 battery pack. The plane on the right is the reactor. I have a 1250 in it. That has more lift being a biplane, so you can put a 3200 battery pack in it, and that's just fine. It flies great. These things are just awesome. You can look at how big the control surfaces are. Huge. So this has very slow landing characteristics. You can bring this in 10 miles an hour, no problem. You have control over it. Big tails. And I have a lot of fun with these planes. These planes are probably not appropriate for a beginner, but for an intermediate, they're great. So this is all you need to have fun. A sweet flying plane, good equipment, and a pretty day with no wind. Okay?